Chelsea won, Arsenal won, in which was a very interesting game, and it looked like it could have gone either way. There was arguably moments where both teams looked like they were on top and could have scored a winning goal. Tactically, it was really interesting, and what I really like about Enzo Maresca is he's more than happy to stick to his philosophy and his style of play, but he always makes small tactical tweaks that differ each week to try and give them the upper hand, give them that competitive edge. And what I do like as well is we're seeing a big difference compared to Mauricio Pochettino's Chelsea, where in these kind of games they would just crumble away. We all remember that 5-0 horrible game. I have bad memories of that, but I thought it was really interesting, and obviously Odegaard came back into the lineup as well today. Cole Palmer did start. We were wondering whether he would, although we'll discuss both of them in a little bit more detail later on in this video. But I want to start off by showing you this touch map. Take a guess of who this could be. I'm not going to reveal it just yet, but have a think whose touch map this could be. It's a very important one, but we'll come back to that in a second. So both teams set up pretty much how we expected. Arsenal kind of play in this fluid system of maybe a 2-3-5. We see it alternate depending on Timber and White and where they go. We went back more to a 4-3-3 today with Rice, Partey and Odegaard in midfield, which was an interesting choice as well, but it seemed to work, and they defended in their 4-4-2 or their 4-1-4-1, it depended. Chelsea, similar as well, they attacked in their 3-2-5 that we are so used to seeing, and they defended in a 4-4-2. Both teams like to go man for man in their press, which is pretty standard. It's what we're kind of used to by now, and it is in the preview to this match. Knowing that both teams like to go man for man meant that we were expecting a lot of long balls over the top. We saw Arsenal do it a lot against Liverpool and it worked for them. We've seen Chelsea do it a fair few times as well and it has worked for them. So I thought we were going to see that again today, and we kind of did to an extent, but nothing as extreme as what maybe we predicted. But a lot of Arsenal's creativity came down their right-hand side. It was very right-side orientated, and I think that's partly due to how they disrupted Chelsea's press and their rest defence shape. Their 4-4-2 was kind of detached a little bit at times because of the movement of certain Arsenal players that we'll cover in a second. But a lot of their creativity came down that side compared to the likes of Rice, Timber and Martinelli on the left. Saka, Havertz, Odegaard and Ben White were all very involved, had a lot of touches, and they were pretty good going forward. Okay, let's have a look at how... Well, actually, I'm going to start with the first goal that came about, and that was this goal right here. The goal that Havertz scored that was decided as offside, and it was rightly so. It came from a lapse of concentration from Chelsea. It actually came from a set piece on this right-hand side, but we can see here, this is Kai Havertz down here. Now, he is slightly offside. I think he got a bit lucky because Colwill, purely because he's pointing to Kai Havertz, he's telling Caicedo, if we zoom in, you can't actually see it, it's too blurry, but this is Colwill right here and Caicedo's here, and he's telling him to get across and mark Havertz. And because he's stretched his body a little bit to point, it's actually meant his shoulder is now playing Kai Havertz offside. The lines are very tight, as we're so used to seeing now in the Premier League. There's always fine margins that define games, and in this moment it kept Chelsea alive. It would have been a big blow. Obviously Havertz did shush us. He went shh, and I didn't like it. I don't think it was very fair of him considering he won us the Champions League, but still, it was a close call. Obviously you can see they tried to take the free kick quickly. Chelsea weren't very happy. You can see Nicholas Jackson down here. Oh, I'm on the wrong thing. Nicholas Jackson down here is facing away from the ball. He's not even paying any attention, and so they play a lovely little through ball into here. I mean, God knows what Sanchez is doing over here as well. He's also not even paying any attention, and when the ball comes through, Havertz does tuck it away, and at that point I thought it was 1-0. You could debate whether it was deserved. Chelsea had missed chances by this point, but also Arsenal did have periods where they were on top. Maybe this was during one of their moments, but Chelsea got away with one here. It was offside, so you can't really debate it. I don't like the quick free kick that they took, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it, so we can't really grumble too much. Just lucky that it was offside. But for the most part, as I mentioned, Chelsea defended in a 4-4-2. And if I can go to my tactics screen, here we go. This is how the team's pretty much set up. You can see Chelsea's 4-4-2 here, so you got, this is their back four, the midfield four, and then the front two. There's their 4-4-2, and Arsenal defending this fluid, attacking this very fluid 3-2-5, sometimes a 2-3-5, depending on where Partey is. And as I said, Chelsea defending a 4-4-2, meaning that they can go man for man in certain areas of the pitch and let some people have more time and space with the ball. But Odegaard and Havertz were the main reasons as to why I think a lot of their threat came down the right-hand side. They disrupted Chelsea's positioning. And actually, we're going to put a big focus on this area of the pitch down here. So when Arsenal build out from the back, let's give David Raya a football. Here we go, because it is football after all. In this situation, in their 4-4-2, Cole Palmer is the man that then puts the pressure on to David Raya. Nicholas Jackson's in a position where he can cover both parties' passing lane and also jump onto Gabriel should the pass come this way. The pass was forced towards Saliba. In this situation, obviously then, Palmer has to track back to try and put some pressure on the ball again. But what you'll notice is the positioning of Pedro Neto and Lavia here. Odegaard's picking up the right half space and Havertz is in a central position in between the lines, and that's very crucial for how Arsenal decided to build up. Because of this 4-4-2, we saw Lavia and Odegaard man-marking each other a lot of the time throughout this game. But with Havertz, he caused some disruption by dropping a bit deeper. So instead of being in a very advanced forward position, he would come in between the lines. And with Caicedo man-marking Declan Rice, it meant that there was a bit of confusion as to who Lavia was going to pick up. As soon as Havertz dropped deep, you can't get one of your centre-backs to step out because then there's too much space for the likes of Rice to run into. So instead, we had to come up with a different solution, and also Arsenal did this very well, is Neto immediately is the one that you kind of notice. The moment the ball comes to Ben White, then Neto has to come across. The issue is now in this position, Havertz comes deep, but you can now see I didn't mean to do that. Here, you've got a 2 versus 1, and it's very much not what Chelsea wants, so that Lavia has to make a decision, / so does Caicedo. Lavia can come across if Odegaard keeps dropping wide, which he did, but then you can see Havertz is in loads of space. Then you have to make the decision, does Caicedo come across? Then Rice is in a load of space. So Arsenal created an overload in the centre of the pitch, especially there. Havertz dropping deep creates a 3 versus 2 against Lavia and Caicedo. The alternative, and which I understood why Maresca chose to do it, is Lavia instead would stay central in this position. Ben White had a bit of time, but the moment he started to progress the ball, Neto had to come and put some pressure onto it. And at this point, Lavia has to come across because you don't want to give Odegaard time and space with a football. It's too dangerous. So Lavia had to come across, and then Caicedo ends up in a more zonal position where he's covering both Havertz and Rice. As soon as the ball goes forward, because it now can't go to Odegaard because he's being blocked off by Neto and then potentially Lavia, quite often we would see the ball into Bukayo Saka. And again, how do we defend Bukayo Saka? That is a real big task because we've seen him so influential in big games. We saw against Liverpool, he beat Andy Robertson and he caught Van Dijk out of position or slacking a little bit, and he managed to get his goal. As soon as the ball came into Saka, Neto was sensational at tracking back. He would get back, and so they would be able to defend 2-on-1 against Bukayo Saka to try and win the ball back. Now you are isolating Ben White. Obviously Palmer would drop a bit deeper in this position, so as soon as this pass does happen, Palmer can curve his run to put a bit of pressure on, but I'm losing my stuff. But as soon as this happened, Neto would obviously then try and come forward again. So it was a good way of Chelsea trying to limit the opportunity of Odegaard and Havertz getting the ball, but Odegaard and Havertz were the two that caused a disruption in Chelsea's press, especially if we go back up here. The moment Odegaard comes wide and Lavia follows him, look at all this space in between the midfield too, that you can either get Havertz dropping deep into, Partey can make a run forward into. You've got so many different options. We've also seen maybe Rice come central and Timber can make a run through. It causes too many issues, and that was what Maresca had to try and fix today, but that's why a lot of the play was focused down the right-hand side for Arsenal. And it's how their goal came about as well. Let's take a look at their goal. So here we go. Arsenal's goal, the one that made it 1-0 in the 59th, 60th minute. And it was a bit of a woeful piece of defending from Chelsea. There were so many errors consistently. Now, this isn't a very good photo. It's quite blurry. But the ball is over. The ball's over here. Partey's got the ball in this position. And we are putting some pressure on the ball. If you zoom in, I think it's Lavia in this position is trying to put a bit of pressure on it. But look here. Look at this man over here. No one's marking. And this is the person I spoke about, Odegaard. His passing lane is open, meaning he can get the ball, and he does, and he drifts infield slightly. There are so many issues with this picture, though. So many. For starters, Odegaard shouldn't have time and space with the ball. Lavia, you can see in this situation, Cucurella is begging for Lavia to put a bit more pressure on. Palmer's obviously not necessarily the person you expect to be putting tackles in here, so you can't fault him too much, but Lavia needs to be even just half a yard closer. But he's not, and that's a problem. Let's have a look at the defensive shape as well. You've got Martinelli here, Declan Rice here. You've got two very good players that can make very good entries into the box, and you've also here, look, that is Bukayo Saka making a run into the box as well. And with Odegaard and his in-swinging crossing ability, that is not what you want. And if we play it forward, it comes over the top to Martinelli. But if we go back again, look at this. This is Colwill. And his positioning is all wrong. You can see both these two know that they're onside because Colwill is so deep. So it's a failed offside trap from Chelsea's defence. Colwill should be stepping up here. There's no reason for him to be that deep. I understand the pass could come in this way. That's an awful arrow, but you know what I mean. In towards, I don't actually know, I think it's Kai Havertz on the right-hand side there. If the ball comes in, you've got Cucurella there to defend Havertz. Colwill doesn't need to be deep, and yet he is. So the moment that this ball comes in, you've got Gusto, the last man in the defensive line, and then you've got two Arsenal players who have got so much time and space. And obviously, as I said, it comes through. Rice actually holds his run, but Bukayo Saka makes his run into the box, and it falls to Martinelli, as we can see over here, who again has so much time and space. He could play a pass across the goal to Bukayo Saka in this situation if he wants. He doesn't, because he's Martinelli. He missed a big chance earlier in the game, and he wanted to redeem himself, and he does. In this position, I almost thought that we'd recovered somewhat miraculously. Gusto flying in to try and make a block to block that far post. How on earth Robert Sanchez in this position gets beat at his near post? I will never know. It's poor defending because there's no pressure on Odegaard. It's poor defending because the defensive line is all over the place. There's two unmarked Arsenal attackers. It's poor defending because it's a failed offside trap, and it's poor goalkeeping as well. It's errors all across the board. And the ball goes into the net, but Martinelli beats Robert Sanchez at his near post. And I was a little bit concerned because I actually thought this was going to start deflating Chelsea. We know after 60 minutes, they do tend to lose their intensity a little bit. They're so aggressive that for the first 60 minutes, they look wonderful. But for the last half an hour or so, they do tend to drop off a little bit. And going 1-0 down at this time called for changes. But I want to go back to that touch map that I spoke about earlier. Whose touch map is this? This is Martin Odegaard's touch map. You probably could have guessed it, but I thought he was the exact reason why Arsenal haven't been great recently. And I actually don't think Arsenal were that good today, but Odegaard, in the moments that he did have, showed that it only takes one moment of magic to beat a low block. His ball over the top was sensational for Martinelli's goal. He had 50 touches this game, created 4 key passes and 2 big chances. Obviously, one of them was the goal. He was ridiculous. And I mean, considering this was a pretty tame showing from him, he's just come back from injury, I thought his performance was brilliant. Cannot fault it at all. And I was surprised that I thought our tactics to defend Odegaard were pretty good, but I'm surprised in the small moments and the small pockets that he did find that he was able to create such good high quality chances, despite them being poor. And I think he was maybe the biggest difference in the second half, you could argue. The first half, I thought Arsenal's midfield lacked a lot of technical control. I don't think Partey was very good. In defensive transition, he was getting bypassed too easily. His passing wasn't necessarily as decisive as it should have been. His accuracy wasn't that bad, but it was accuracy in passes that set his teammates up for failure. And I don't think he had the technical control that Arsenal were looking for in them situations. The final thing I want to talk about in this situation is actually in the man marking role that Chelsea defended with between Madueke and Gusto. I think they interchanged very interestingly. So when Rice didn't attack, we know Arsenal do try and use their fluidity. I call it chaotic fluidity, and I spoke about this in my review of their game against Inter Milan. It's sometimes they don't always fill the 5 channels of attacking lines. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got the 2 wing positions, the central position, and then the 2 half spaces. You want someone occupying each lane there. And in some situations, when Rice didn't progress into the left half space, when he stayed a bit deeper, Martinelli was holding the width on the left-hand side. And then when Timber decided to invert, Madueke would track him back into this position. But similarly, when Martinelli drifted infield, sometimes Martinelli was in this position and Gusto would follow him so that Timber could overlap and Madueke did follow him. I think that what Arteta was trying to do was drag Gusto inside the pitch to then create space for the Timber overlap. But I think Madueke was given the instruction to constantly man-mark Timber, follow him wherever he goes. And so sometimes you'd actually see Gusto in a right centre-back of a back three and Madueke as a right back or a right wing back. I thought that was an interesting tactical decision from both Arteta and Maresca on how they wanted to attack the space and then defend the person attacking that space, if that makes sense. Now, I actually think Chelsea were brilliant, great without the ball. I think Neto's positioning was crucial to this, as we spoke about, his central position to block off the passing lane into Odegaard, but also his intensity to press Ben White as soon as Ben White got the ball, and then to track back and team up with Cucurella as well to go 2 versus 1 against Saka. I thought he was really impressive today. But on the ball as well, he looked really good. This is Neto's touch map for this game. You can see he's all over the place. Now, he did go from left wing to right wing in about the 65th minute or so when Mudryk came on. From the right wing position, he looked so much more threatening. On the left wing, he put some really good crosses in. We'll get to the Gusto moment in a minute. But on the right wing, he looked really threatening as well. And I think Neto showed how, against a team like Arsenal, you just have to have a little bit of intensity and a little bit of willingness to drive with the ball. Now, granted, first half, he maybe didn't take Ben White on as much as he should have, but second half, he looked much better at taking Ben White on. And then, obviously, on the other side, Urian Timber. And I thought he was really good, and he was influential in our transition as well. We transitioned really interestingly today, and it was different from what we expected. We know Chelsea like to go into a 3-2-5 with, at the moment, it's been Malo Gusto attacking that right half space position with Palmer in the left half space. But when Chelsea won back the ball, it was primarily because of Caicedo winning it in the midfield and then playing a quick ball forward. And we've seen him do it against the likes of West Ham. I can't remember who else, but there was another game where he did it brilliantly as well. Was it against Liverpool? It might have been against Liverpool, where he plays it, wins the ball back in the middle of the pitch, plays it through for Jackson, and Jackson finishes off the move. He did that again, a similar sort of thing again today. And I thought he had a really good game. He really impressed me. Actually, I'm going to take a look at it. This is his heat map from the game as well. I was really impressed. He covered so much ground. He dropped deeper when he needed to. He got forward. He was tenacious. He was aggressive. His positioning was just brilliant. And I was really impressed with Caicedo today. And he was almost the first point of our attacks quite often. He'd win the ball back in the middle of the pitch and play a ball forward. But interestingly, normally we are used to seeing Madueke attack the right. When he wins this ball back in this position, Jackson makes the run between the two centre-backs. So he would make this central run in behind, and then Caicedo would play a pass into him so that Jackson's then 1-on-1 against the goalkeeper. Today, instead, though, as soon as Caicedo won the ball, the aim was actually for Jackson to go wide. He became more of a right winger in the transition. He'd attack this channel, and Caicedo would play the pass over the top, and then Madueke would come infield, because he almost wanted to drag Timber centrally and Gabriel wide, so that you're confusing their defence, you're disrupting their defensive shape. You can't have Timber stay in this position when he's all the way up here. You can't allow Jackson all this space. Instead, Gabriel's the one that has to come back, and then Madueke can drive. Palmer drives into the left attacking position, and Neto comes to the left. And that's how we almost got this 4-2-4 immediate transitional shape. Obviously, then when it recovered, Jackson would drift central, Madueke out, and then Gusto comes into this position. Obviously, the Arsenal team are much deeper, but that's the attacking shape that we're so used to seeing Chelsea play. And I'm much happy that we did it this way, because it meant Colwill was playing as a central centre-back instead of Fofana. Fofana was brilliant today, by the way, but Colwill's much better in that position. I prefer him central than I do him as a left centre-back of a back three. And Cucurella being the left centre-back, I thought had a really good game as well, but we'll touch on him in a second. Talking of Gusto getting forward, though, he missed an absolute sitter. And I don't actually think I was meant to get the photo for it, and I haven't, unfortunately. But he missed an absolute sitter. So I think Saliba's pinning or blocking off Nicholas Jackson. Without seeing the photo, I can't entirely remember. I think he's blocking off Nicholas Jackson. There's a couple other people blocking players off in the box. And so it's Martinelli that actually has to track back and A brilliant cross comes in from Pedro Neto from the left-hand side. Gusto from about 2 yards out somehow blazes it over the bar. He has to score. Martinelli doesn't get there first. Gusto does. But it just goes to show that whilst I think tactically and positionally, Gusto is ridiculously good in that right half space, his attacking output isn't quite there yet. He's still yet to score his first goal for Chelsea, and it should have come today. But it didn't. But we did get a goal. It happened. In the 70th minute, we did get a goal. 10 minutes later, Pedro Neto with a ridiculous finish. It was beautiful to see. So let's have a look at how it came about. So here we go. This is the positions. We can see, here's Pedro Neto with the ball. He's very deep, and Caicedo's in the right position. You'd almost expect these two to be the other way around. And actually, I think Arsenal do too, because this is where the goal comes from. It's a bit of confusion in this shape. So Pedro Neto's got the ball here. He plays a lovely pass into Enzo Fernandez. And you can see here is Pedro Neto. He's drifting this way. And you can see he's crossing over with Caicedo. So they're switching. So Caicedo can come central and Neto can come out to the right-hand side because he's just been moved to right wing. Mudrik's come in the left wing position. So from here, I'm expecting Neto to make this movement, Caicedo to make this movement to support Enzo Fernandez. That would have been fine. Wouldn't have questioned that. But look at the space between Kai Havertz and Martinelli. All this space that you can see here. Pedro Neto is saying, I want to attack that space. Now, obviously, he's doing it in a Portuguese accent, so it's a little bit different. But he sees this space and he wants to attack it. And he does. He starts making this run. Martinelli's not picked up. I think in this situation, Martinelli maybe should be picking up Neto because he's deep and advanced. But because of Caicedo being in that position and retreating, Martinelli doesn't pick him up, and nor does Kai Havertz. Enzo Fernandez then plays a lovely pass back to Neto. He sees him making this darting run in between the two attackers, Arsenal's attackers, and he finds himself in between the lines in a look at all this space he has to operate in. He could have done anything here, really. But, of course, he's had a good game so far. He's only got one thing in his mind. That's actually not a good arrow. That's a bit better. That's what he wants to do. And he does it perfectly. He does it sensationally. Here we go. Drills the ball into this far little bottom right corner. David Raya, no chance. Lovely hit with power along the ground. It's just a lovely finish. Such a good finish. Not one of them screamers into a top right corner. Just nicely hit. Cleanly hit across the floor. Goalkeeper, no chance. And it's 1-1. And I'm losing my mind. And I think we might go and win this game. We don't, but I thought it could have happened. And I thought Neto had a really good game today. I showed you his touch map. I thought he was really impressive. But a lot of the interesting things that came from today were how were Chelsea going to stop Odegaard and Saka? And how were Arsenal going to stop Cole Palmer? And actually, I think each one of them didn't get involved in the game as much you'd expect. Palmer had very little involvement. Saka was very limited on that right-hand side. And Odegaard had a few moments of magic. So maybe he was the least defended one. But he still wasn't really that massive in the game. He wasn't dictating everything. He was playing really well, but he wasn't as good as we'd sometimes seen. I do think Cucurella against Bukayo Saka, especially when Neto came back so they could double up on him, Cucurella had a brilliant game. And for me, and I know Gary Neville gave it to him as well, for me, Cucurella was my man of the match. He completely took Saka out of the game. Saka had no threat whatsoever. And in fact, his stats were he had 9 defensive actions, which are the most in the game. He had 3 interceptions, 3 tackles, 2 clearances, a block shot, and he wasn't dribbled past at all. Saka could not get past him. He was really aggressive in making sure he stepped in at the right time, got the blocks in. He just played really well against such a good player like Bukayo Saka. It reminded me of the Spain versus England final, but we don't talk about that because I'm actually happy this time. And I actually think Cucurella was brilliant. I think he justified starting. We could have seen Reece James on the right and Gusto on the left. I'm glad we didn't. Cucurella looked brilliant today. And I was really impressed with Chelsea and Enzo Maresca on how they played. And Chelsea currently sit 3rd in the table, Arsenal 4th, equal on points. Are Arsenal as good as we've ever seen them? No. Are Chelsea as good as we've seen them in a long time? Yes. I think we saw today a gap bridged, that's the phrase, a gap bridged between Chelsea and the top elite teams. Enzo Maresca is getting there. And whilst there were lapses in concentration, Robert Sanchez should be nowhere near my club. They looked really good today. and I'm really impressed with that Chelsea performance. I think there's a lot of good takeaways from Arsenal too, and it's probably a deserved point. A 1-1 draw is probably a respectable scoreline. Both teams had equal chances pretty much, so I cannot complain too much. But let me know what were your thoughts on this game. Let me know down below. Do you think 1-1 was fair? What else do you think of the game? What do you think? I'm just happy that we got a point against Arsenal. That's it. That's all I can talk about, really. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Go and check out how Arsenal lost to Inter Milan in the Champions League earlier this week. I did a video all on that, so go and check that out if you want to see it. But until next time, I will see you very soon, and thank you for watching.